Welcome to Tales from the Fandom, a podcast that brings a special guest out of the multiverse and straight to you. And now your host, David Ginsburg.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the latest episode of Tales from the Fandom. Today, I am joined by Kimi, aka Golden Lasso Girl, for this episode today. Kimi, how are you doing?
I'm great, and I'm so excited to be here.
I am so excited to have you as a guest. I make a list of people, like especially on Twitter, of, hey, I'd like to reach out to these people. And I kind of like try to work through my list on occasion. And I'm so excited that you said yes. And thank you so much for the time that you are spending with me today.
No problem. I'm very excited to talk all things fandom.
There's so much stuff that I want to get to, but I really want to jump in first to comics and movies. And you said like one of your things is Wonder Woman or slash feminist stuff, and I'm all about that. So I guess my first question is like, how did you get into comics first? Was it the movie that got you interested? Like where does your fandom of that start?
Oh man, when I was really little, I've always been like tall and athletic and have long dark hair and kind of been a tomboy. And then so when I was like 8 or 9, a neighbor, a friend of ours, was moving away to college, and he was giving away a bunch of his stuff from his room and from when he was a kid. And he gave us this large box of old comic books of all different types. There's Marvel, DC, a bunch of different stuff in there. And I was lucky enough that there was a couple of the old George Perez run of Wonder Woman in there. And it just like caught my eye. And at the time, there wasn't like really any Wonder Woman stuff out there. They had some merchandise and things like that. Batman the Animated Series was a thing, and I was a huge fan of that. Mm-hmm. So like suddenly I'm like looking at this comic book, and it's this tall, like athletic girl with long dark hair. I was like, oh my gosh, who is this? So it just like really got me into it, and it was a great run. So I started like trying to go to the comic book store when I could, and I've just been a fan ever since then. It was one of those things that, like at an awkward point in a girl's life, like when I was starting to slowly become a teenager, things like that. There was this woman who it was okay to be strong. It was okay to not have a man around who was in charge of you. And that was close to my heart too, because like I grew up in an all-woman household. So at a time when, a lot of people, like it was a noticeable thing if your dad wasn't around. So as a kid, it just made me like feel this really strong kinship with her as a character.
Oh, that's awesome. I know that with me having kids and I have a daughter, like I always look at what she's consuming as far as like books or media of like video games or TV shows. And we saw Wonder Woman together. Mm-hmm. She dug Wonder Woman, and the thing that she's really into now is She-Ra, which is I don't want to say like a parallel to Wonder Woman, but at the same time, like it's giving her that like positive warrior type role model of you can be a woman and you can be strong and you can be like all of these things that I want her to be. And like I'm so happy that you were able to find Wonder Woman.
Yeah, especially it was like the early 90s. There weren't a lot of them. Like She-Ra, like the old She-Ra was there. I was a huge fan of the original She-Ra. You go back and watch now and it's a little cringeworthy. But I've always loved horses too. So Swiftwind was like my jam totally. But there's always a little bit of like, I don't know why, like there was a little bit of a disconnect, like little girls, I think all children in general, I think they all look for heroes who they can see themselves reflected in. Mm-hmm. So, at the time there weren't very many brunette heroes out there. And even Disney movies, like Snow White was the only brunette Disney princess at the time. So it was just striking for me to have Wonder Woman, as a brunette. And that's just a little bit of a small sliver of what, minority children find, and they're not able to find, heroes who look like them. And that's one of the things I really love about the new Shira that your daughter's watching. I'm a huge fan of that show. It's got just such great representation, but without it being something like older people like myself. I guess I'm not that old, but they have like the one episode that was about, this is about representation. So like you'd have your season of the show, and then this is the one with the moral lesson, and this is how
Hmm.
you treat each other, and this is how you accept people who are different from you. And the great thing about what we're seeing now with like the Dragon Prince and this new Shira is it's just there. Like
Yep.
all the people are just there. They are who they are, and they're accepted for who they are. And it's not a point of the plot who they are.
Exactly. And you bring up Dragon Prince, and one of my favorite characters on that show is, I think her name is Amaya.
Yes. Oh my God.
And
I'm gonna
I
cosplay her. I love her.
I love her. Like, I love everything about her. I love that show just, here's this character, and she is a general,
Mhm.
and she can do everything that like anybody else can do. She just is, you know, sign language.
Yeah.
Great. Like,
Yeah.
give me more of that. I want that. Thank you.
Yeah, and I love the way they handle it too, because um, a lot of times when there's characters who do sign language in shows and things like that, there's subtitles,
Mhm.
even if you don't have like closed captioning on, and they don't do that for Amaya. Like they're able to like she's able to. She has a friend who translates for her when necessary, but it's just an accepted part. And generally, with body language and what's happening in the scene, you can completely follow what's happening and figure out what she means, but it's not treated as this other thing. It's just part of who she is, and everyone around her is completely accepting of it, and she loses no respect as a general, and nobody questions her effectiveness because of it. It's amazing.
Oh my goodness, yes. I am so thrilled. I was thrilled that, like, and spoiler alert for anyone that hasn't watched the latest season of Dragon Prince, but I was so excited that she is still around,
Yeah.
and kicking butt and doing everything that she can be, because oh my gosh, like, the characters that they are bringing out for She-Ra, for Dragon Prince, for a lot of these shows now, it's like, man, I am so here for everything that they're doing,
Mhm.
because I'm excited that, like, my daughter who has brown hair can find somebody that looks like her, or that her friend that looks different can find somebody that looks like them. And it is so nice, and I'm just so pleased with, like, the state of some, like, a lot of the shows that we're getting now, of where they are taking the characters to.
Yeah, and I think it's so important that we all keep supporting these shows, because that's how we're going to get more made. I mean, that's how networks work. Even if it's like the best show ever, if nobody watches it, they're not going to continue making uh, things in that vein. So if we keep supporting Dragon Prince and She-Ra and all these things that are starting to come out, like that's just going to increase the market and have them make more, until hopefully someday it's completely like the norm.
Mhm. It's not where it's like, "Oh, here's the one
Yeah.
character." And I think one of the shows that's doing it real well, which totally is off topic, but, like, Brooklyn Nine-Nine is one of those shows where it's like, "Oh, look, here's all these different characters," and I think it's only, like, 2 or 3 characters are white, and the rest are anything else. Like,
Yeah.
just thank you. Like, and it's just it is normal, and
Mhm.
please just do that.
Yeah. I'm glad. I mean, it's slowly getting better. It's incredibly slowly. And there's still huge missteps, and there's still, just shows and things like that just blow it. But like when I was a kid, you would never have seen shows like Shira and Dragon Prince and things like that with that type of representation.
Oh,
Um,
absolutely not.
I think the most diverse thing I can think of from when I was a kid is Captain Planet.
Mhm.
And I think that was just very specifically because they were trying to pick people from around the world. But I still think that Yeah, I don't know. Of the 5 kids, they still managed to make 2 of them white. So
Yeah, yeah. I was thinking back because we just finished watching one of my favorite shows, which was Boy Meets World way back in the day, and I
mm.
introduced it to the kids, and I'm like, man, like there is not a lot of diversity in that show.
I know, and it's funny how you kind of didn't think of that when you watched it when you were younger, which kind of speaks to, like, at least for me, for my like my white privilege. Like I
Hmm.
would watch these things, and I get kids don't pick up on that unless they know that they're missing from it. So
Exactly.
I you go back and watch now that we're much more aware, now that we're adults, we can look through the lens of other people, and being in other people's shoes a little bit more and being empathetic to their needs. And yeah, you watch some of those shows you loved as a kid and you're just like, wow. Yeah, they would definitely not representation on the mind when they did that.
Oh no. Now, are you still into comics today, or is it something that as you got older, like you kind of phased out a little bit?
I'm still very into comics. I'm a little bit behind at the moment, just because during the school year, I'm a teacher for my day job. During the school year, I just kind of run out of time a little bit. So I
Hmm.
generally like binge reading comics at like spring break and summer and things like that. Um, I have I eventually was able to collect really beautiful copies of all of George Perez's original run. So I have them all in plastic. I have a bunch of different things I have when they did the new 52. I got copies of all those. That was hit or miss for me. Like there were some books I really loved and really like followed week to week. And then there were some that I was like, okay, I got the first 2 and I didn't follow them after that. For Rebirth, I'm mostly a DC person, probably. You can probably tell that from my description of what I'm buying. Um, but occasionally Marvel catches my eye with certain things, but it's been a little while. But Rebirth, I liked a lot of that. I was really impressed with the beginning of how they handled Wonder Woman and then the flipping the 2 storylines between creative teams, which was really awesome. And they did a good job with that. And I just, the art for that was really, really fantastic.
I used to be into comics, when I was in college and had that expendable income.
Yeah.
And now it's I will wait for the trade paperback, unfortunately, because that's what I can afford and it collects everything that I need.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, I do that for some runs too. That's generally how I get my Marvel comics. Is like once it's like all finished, I'll get the trade one.
yeah, I love to support my comic book shop, but I can't just the cover prices are just too much for me.
It's and well for me too, the storage of it all.
Oh yeah.
So like I keep like I want to support print comics so badly and my friendly local comic shop, but there's just like this like I feel like I'm gonna eventually just give in because there's some that I get. I still get Wonder Woman printed. Anything with Big Barda, I will get that in print. But a lot of things I'm getting digital now, just because it's so much easier. It's just all in my tablet. It's just there. I don't have to worry about finding storage for it all.
Exactly. I think all of my comics are still in the garage, and it's like, okay,
Yeah,
I hope they survive.
yeah. There's so much. Spend so much money on the little plastic sleeves.
Yep. Did that. There. Hope. Crossing fingers.
Yeah,
Crossing fingers here.
there's only so much you can do.
Now, if I know that you said you're behind on stuff, but is there comics that you would love to recommend to people that maybe because I am not a DC person at all,
Mhm,
and I always try to like get inroads into DC, not absolutely not through the movies with the exception of Wonder Woman and
mhm.
like half of Aquaman, um,
Okay,
but
yeah, yeah, okay, I got
but
it.
I'd
Shazam was
love.
pretty good too, though. I liked Shazam.
I didn't get to see it yet.
Oh, you should check out Shazam. It is surprisingly like I went into it expecting to hate it, and it's surprisingly good and heartwarming.
I will have to check it out
Yeah.
because I love the DC animated stuff, and I love what they did on the CW. Even though I'm way behind on those
Mhm.
shows, but I've never gotten into DC Comics, like the comic portion.
Yeah. Well, the thing that I most used to recommending people, they're like, okay, especially after the movie came out, a lot of people came to me and were like, okay, so I watched this movie. I want to go and read a little bit, like what can I read about Wonder Woman? So I have a couple recommendations specifically for that. I find that comic recommendations are very personal. So without like knowing someone, like I hesitate to ever recommend, oh, I think you'll love this, because there's so many flavors of it out there. And someone who loves Deadpool may not love, something else, and X-Men may not be their thing. So it's really a personal thing. But if you want to read, like if you want to get into Wonder Woman, if you've never been into comic books before, the easiest place to start right now is probably with Wonder Woman Year One, which came out in 2016. And that was what I was talking about with Rebirth, which was after they started doing the cinematic universe for DC Comics, they kind of rebranded and updated a lot of the comic books so it reflected more the style of, or at least the costume style that was in the movies. And that's just a fantastic place to start. They do a great job of updating her backstory. So they take a very similar take on it to the George Perez run from 1986. But they've just updated a little bit, and the art is just stunning. It's Nicola Scott, who's one of my favorite Wonder Woman artists, and she actually herself, she's like 6'1" or something, this beautiful ex-model who decided to be a comic book artist and does a fantastic job. She actually auditioned to be Wonder Woman in a show like way back in the day. It was very funny. So that's where I would recommend you start. Realize that when they did that, the movie had just come out. They wanted people to really get into it. So issue 1 is like her origin story. The next one is like her in modern day, and they flip back and forth like that. So you actually would buy like the first one, the third one, the fifth one, the seventh one. I forget if it's odd or evens that were the origin story or not. But look at it and make sure you're buying the origin story ones. The other ones are great too, but it's a little bit confusing. It's kind of like jumping into a novel in the middle. So it's a little bit better if you read the other ones first and then go back and kind of read the other ones.
Okay, cool. I always like looking for different stories, especially with trying to get into DC. Like there's just characters that I'm not interested in at all on the DC side of things. So I always look for like those characters or those stories where it's like, okay, let me start off at the beginning, or at the beginning of whenever they decide to reboot with their issue ones, like they tend to do every couple of years.
I do, yeah. There's also there's some graphic novels that I think really capture Wonder Woman really well. There's one called The Legend of Wonder Woman, Volume 1. And I don't remember the name. Renee Liz, I think, or something like that is the name of the person who wrote it. And it's got a little bit more of a cartoony style, but it's a cool origin story for Wonder Woman. It's kind of like alternate. It's not like the canon story, but it really captures who she is, and it's really fun. And it's during World War II. So she's like a nurse, and it's just a really great, heartwarming story. It shows her friendship with Etta Candy really beautifully. Another one that's like any Wonder Woman fan will just like rave over it. It's like classic. It's called The Hikatea, which is, I forget how to spell it, but by Greg Rucka. And that came out in 2003. And that's just fantastic. It's a famous cover. It's Wonder Woman's boot on top of Batman's head.
Okay, yep, I know that.
Everyone's seen that art for it. And that's not an origin story. It's just a fantastic graphic novel story about Wonder Woman and Batman and their values and what happens when they're kind of pitted against each other in this situation. And it just captures Diana and her kind of the tug of war between the ancient world that she serves and her like modern obligations. So she's the Themysciran ambassador. Like, so she like goes to the United Nations. She represents them there, but she's also a hero. And so it's a fantastic story. A little bit darker. The Legend of Wonder Woman one I was talking about a minute ago is a little bit more lighthearted, but the Hikatea is, let me Google that while we're talking so I can spell it for you. It's Hiketeia. That one's, it's not dark. Like it's not DC Cinematic Universe dark. Like Batman and Wonder Woman fight in it, but it's not like Batman v Superman or something. But it's a fantastic, if you want to get at the heart of the character of Wonder Woman, like that just nails it.
Awesome. I'll put them on my list because I always like to pick up things on occasion. And then after I read, like generally after I read like my graphic novels, if it's not something I'm going to like keep forever, I try to donate to like those little libraries that are around in
Oh,
our
that's awesome.
town.
Yeah.
That way, maybe someone else will dig it.
Yeah.
So on top of comics and your DC love and Wonder Woman,
Mhm.
one of the things that really was like it threw me. I was like, oh, I gotta check this out. Is that you're in a band?
Yeah, I'm in a band. Yes. Actually, we're pretty new. There's three of us. We're called the Mary Sues. You can find us at marysuesband.com. And we've actually been playing together because I've been performing at Renaissance fairs for more years than I will admit. And so we were all in a band called the Merry Wives of Windsor together for many years. And then the three of us are just super nerds in so many different ways. Like we're into comics and dressing up and cosplay, and kind of between all of it, the three of us, like every fandom is represented. And so we were just like, hey, we have some free time. Why do we don't try doing some, like writing some songs about geek music? We've written songs for Ren Fair for so many years. Let's like start this thing. So uh, like crazy, just in a rush one Saturday, we decided to do a spoof on What Child Is This? But we decided to do The Child Is This, which is, so it's about Baby Yoda from The Mandalorian. Um, so it's a spoof on that with the music, and you can find that on the webpage, which is lots of fun. We're rehearsing now. We have like 5 or 6 songs. Some of them are original. We've done a lot of songs about tabletop gaming because that's another big hobby of mine. And hopefully we'll start doing gigs and get some more singles released soon and things like that. So it's lots of fun. We actually have a video on YouTube of our Baby Yoda song, though. It's kind of fun.
Well, I'll have to check that out.
Mhm.
What do you like? So in the band,
Mhm.
what are you like lead singer? Are you like what do you do? What's your part of this trio?
Well, the three of us all sing. My friend Claire sings soprano, I sing mezzo soprano, and then my friend Carol sings alto. So we've some the like when you if you watch the Baby Yoda video, it's very kind of choral sounding. We all sing through the whole thing in different parts. Other songs we each take, we split up verses and things like that. So we all sing all of it. We also all play instruments. I play something called the Irish bouzouki. I've played mandolin for years, and it's basically like a big mandolin. It sounds like a guitar. Most people don't know the difference. So it sounds like a guitar. My friend Claire, she plays the keyboard for us, and Carol plays the bass. So she's been playing stand-up bass for forever. So now she's swapped and she's playing electric bass for this gig.
I'm just kind of amazed, like on top of everything that you're doing, because you not only like do you have a day job, but you also have this band, and
Mhm.
you also, as we're going to talk about in the future about like tabletop gaming, like you've got your hands in that in a number of different like projects.
Yeah.
How do you find the time?
um, that is a great question. I have no idea. I get asked that question a lot. Lots of time management. I love spreadsheets and organizing things. I don't like being like bored. So lots of things fit in between other things, and probably less sleep than I should have.
I got you on that less sleep thing.
Yeah.
I don't know how I manage, but I do. But that's so awesome. So what is the goal for the Mary Sues? Is it to put out like to keep putting out music and get gigs? Like what do you want with what do you want to happen with the Mary Sues?
Honestly, it started because I was just missing making music. I'd stopped doing Renaissance Fair because okay, for example, I did run out of time doing that because it's so many weekends a year. And it's like, okay, I have to kind of prioritize stuff. So I just really missed singing and writing music. I really love writing lyrics. And then I usually hand it over to my friend Claire, who's just like so talented at creating original music. So I was just really missing that kind of creative aspect of it. I do get a lot of creativity and with my cosplay, but it's a little bit of a different kind of creativity. So really when we started, it was like, hey, let's just hang out in my living room and play music. And then we started having fun with it. And then we're like, okay, and then we came up with a good name. And then slowly it's become like a little bit of a bigger and bigger thing. And then we released a YouTube video and which got like a couple thousand hits its first day. It was very exciting. And then I think now at this point, we just want to keep releasing some singles. Our first thing, the Child Is This is available on Spotify and iTunes now. So yeah, just, I think live gigs would be fun eventually. Like, I think none of us are in a place in our lives, like Claire just had a baby, things like that, where we're going to like go on the road or something like that.
Right.
But it's such a cool digital age for musicians right now, though, because people can find your music all over the world, and and you never have to leave your house.
Yeah,
But, yeah,
the way that music has turned into now is something, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, it's like you'd never think about it like that.
yeah, no, it's crazy. So we can record something and upload it onto the computer that same afternoon, and then in like 4 to 8 days, it's all over the world on the internet. So I think that's more our goal, is just to keep making fun videos because we love doing that, releasing stuff online, and then like maybe some local gigs. Like we're lucky enough in LA, there's a whole bunch of very popular comic book shops and geek gaming stores and things like that have like performance areas, so that sort of thing.
Absolutely. And that's super cool. I think you may be the first musician that I've had on the podcast. That's so
No,
cool.
that's exciting.
It's always exciting.
Yeah.
So you're into comics and movies, you got your band, and you cosplay.
I do, yes. Cosplay is kind of like how I got, well, I was into comics since I was a kid, but cosplay was sort of my first kind of delve into, like, I guess what they call like geek culture, as far as like interacting on a large scale with lots of people who weren't just my local friends in
Mhm.
nerddom. So yeah, I've been cosplaying. I started cosplaying in 2011. So before that, I'd done, and like I said, I've been performing at Renaissance fairs for years. So I'd done a lot of costume work and like reenactments and things like that, which now are kind of considered cosplay as well. But at the time, like cosplay was, you were dressing up as anime or comic book characters at conventions. Like it was a much more narrow definition when I started, I guess
Mhm.
not 8 years ago now, 9 years ago. Oh my gosh.
Right, yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, so it was really fun. I really liked, obviously my first cosplay was Wonder Woman. Shocking, I'm sure. And actually the pilot for the TV show that never got picked up, with Adrian Palicki had come out.
Yes.
And they'd released the pictures from that, and it just looked so bad. And I feel bad, but it was like plastic looking, and like this bustier she was wearing. And I mean, there was a whole bunch of memes going around about it at the time. It was like Hot Wheels tracks that they'd painted, gold and stuff. It really wasn't. I feel really bad. I'm sure there's some poor professional costumer out there who's just horrified by those images now. But I got really upset because at the time there was absolutely no even talk of a Wonder Woman movie or anything like that. She was still very much a sideline character for DC. She was like their flagship female character, but they weren't really doing much with her or any female characters at the time. So, I was like, okay, this is ridiculous. Like, it's so obvious what you should do with her. Like, give her this leather kind of Grecian Roman inspired outfit that's based, but on it's a little bit more modernized version of historical garb from the time. And at the time, I didn't know cosplaying was a thing. So I thought I was going to be the only one to show up to San Diego Comic-Con dressed up because it was my first year going. So yeah. So I got this blacksmith friend of mine from the Renaissance Fair to do my armor. I sewed, like a Roman style skirt and corset and stuff, all from leather. I mean, it's still to this day one of my favorite costumes, even though I don't tend to wear it very much anymore because I have so many different versions now. But in this process, I discovered that, there's this whole world of people who do this thing. And at the time, it was like you'd have a little bit of social media presence. Instagram wasn't a thing or any of that stuff. Facebook was kind of big, but the world of cosplay was just starting to like kind of be noticed.
Hmm.
So I had to go looking for it. And even though I had been a comic fan my whole life and into like nerd culture, cosplay wasn't like a really big thing at the time. So like I was I was having to go searching on the internet for forums and things like that like explains how to do this and how to do this and make sure you can do this. So it's fantastic. I think I'm very lucky. I got into cosplay right as it kind of started to become mainstream. So it's been really fantastic to kind of watch that process of it being this like small, barely known thing where I had to kind of explain to people what it was. Where now, like I listen to the radio and people are using. I don't listen to the radio, but like listening to Spotify, and I was listening to Pod Save America the other day, and they used the term cosplay to explain something, and I was like, man, it's a totally different world out here now. It's like now such a common term that it is used to explain other things, which is fantastic and crazy.
It is. It's something where even when I started the podcast, it was cosplayers that I brought on first because it's so easy to identify. Like, hey, like you're into stuff. Let's talk about it.
Yeah.
And to see where it's come from, where I remember at comic book conventions, I'd always hear like people talking about like, oh, look at those weird people,
Mhm.
walking down the street, which back in, let's see here, let me date myself, 93,
Mhm.
94, I was in like a Star Trek fan club, and I would wear my Star Trek uniform to the conventions.
Yeah.
And it's like, that to me was like that was going out on a limb, number one, because
Mhm.
it's Star Trek, and it wasn't like how it is nowadays, I feel.
Yeah.
But yeah, like now you have like whole sections of cosplay material, like cosplay related materials, and magazines about cosplay, and cosplay guides and techniques, and it is insane the what has like it feels like it's exploded over like the past 5 or 6 years to where it is now. It's like I can't believe like the number one, like the time and dedication and the blood, sweat, and tears that people put into the costumes.
Mhm.
And I'm like, man, I my hands don't work like that. I can't do it. But I'm so impressed by the people that just everything that they put out is just so incredible.
Yeah, it's so much fun. And I love dressing up, but I actually love the process of planning and executing the costume more. I kind of feel like, I mean, not that I need another job, but like when I start to like, I'm too old for dressing up. Not that you were ever too old to dress up, but I feel like at some point I'm just gonna get too lazy to dress up because dressing up is a lot of work. Like just figuring it out to like, I don't know, maybe I'll, find someone who's like, okay, you just get to wear my outfits. I'll make them, you wear them. But I love making things that are very uh, realistic. So like most of my Wonder Woman cosplays are made of actual leather or leatherette. I try and be vegan when I can. And then not eating, but as far as my costume making.
Hmm.
So I just love that kind of realism. The Nolan Batman films, I really loved the aesthetic kind of those. Wonder Woman, they did a fantastic job with like the textures and all of that in the Wonder Woman movie. So I was really pleased when I finally got to see that. And it's so fantastic. But I like my Big Barda cosplay is actually all scale mail. I did like the full bodysuit of scale mail, which took way longer than I'll ever admit that I spent on anything. But it's all blue aluminum scales and things like that. I just love going the extra mile and making it like super realistic, or is it at least as realistic as you can. And I was lucky enough when the DC bombshells were a thing. Actually, before they were a comic, they were just this line of statues, collectible statues.
Mm-hmm.
And I was in a group that the year that they were released, and there was a bunch of groups that did them, but there were, people invited me into the group. Wonder Woman was already taken, so I was like, okay, who am I going to be? Zatanna was taken. She's one of my other kind of go-tos. I like wearing my own hair. Like, I hate wearing wigs, so I try and find the girl with the long dark hair is like my go-to. So I eventually was like, okay, like they didn't have a Barda at the time. It wasn't designed. So I was like, okay, I'll design my own and go with the group as Big Barda. So I designed my own original Big Barda bombshell. And I'm a huge Big Barda fan. Like, she and Wonder Woman are like neck and neck for my favorite. Barda's just such a fascinating character. I feel like that's a whole nother podcast you and I could do, is talking about how amazing Barda is. But I did like this bombshell version where I took, this military hat and put the trademark little horn shapes on there that were inspired by samurai helmets and things like that. And went to Comic-Con with my big group of friends. There was like 12 of us. And I was lucky enough, I was at the DC booth, and the gentleman who was in charge of the bombshell line saw me and was just like, this is amazing. This is perfect. Like, we've been trying to figure out what to do with Big Barda, and you nailed it. This is, you have like the military aspect of her and all these different things. And I like went through the outfit and explained why I'd chosen each thing and designed it the way I did, and why I used, the little stripes and the pin and, the red trim and all these things. So actually they designed the character after my outfit. They bought it from me.
That's so awesome.
Yeah. So if you see the Big Barda bombshell design, that is in my head canon, it's always me, because it started off with my outfit that I made for Comic-Con.
That is incredible. That is almost like a pinnacle dream moment of.
It was crazy. It's the strangest thing. And it's the strangest thing, they invited me because DC Comics is, in Burbank, and I'm in LA. So it's like a 5-minute drive from my house. So they invited me over to see it. And it's the strangest thing watching people, like this board of a bunch of pictures of you for them to draw off of. And they haven't made a lot of Big Barda merchandise with that outfit, unfortunately. There was one issue of the comic where she was like a roller derby design, and they made the statue out of that, unfortunately. But like every once in a while there's like a little figure, or my mom found for me for Christmas, she's like, hey, I saw these of your outfit. And I guess there's like trading cards in Japan or something that have
Cool.
the Big Barda bombshell design on them, and it's just kind of crazy sometimes.
Now, you mentioned Wonder Woman and Big Barda for cosplaying. When you're choosing characters, is it just and your hair is another one. When you're choosing characters, is it that that you love that character so much that you want to cosplay them, or is it like there's like an outfit that you're drawn to? Like, how do you choose who you want to represent, essentially?
It kind of depends. Like, I have to like the character, because generally for my outfits, it's hundreds of hours of work. It takes so long. So I definitely have to have like a connection with the character. I will freely admit that there's characters I have discovered because I was, looking around and I saw an outfit that I was like, oh, that'd be amazing to make. I wonder who that character is. And then like I look into them, and then I start reading comics or whatever they're from, and really get into it that way. But generally it's the other way around. Like, it's a character I really love. And I just enjoy doing that. So General Maya from Dragon Prince, who we were talking about, is definitely on my list because I love her. Her armor's very cool, but also she's just such a great character. I tend to be drawn towards strong, athletic women. That's kind of my build, so it works well for me. But I also just really enjoy kind of personifying that. It's fun when you're at a con and there's little kids and they're just like, oh, hey, Wonder Woman, and you talk to them for a few minutes. I don't like, there are some cosplayers who are in character the whole time, and I'm not that. But with kids, I'm like, hi, my name's Diana. And I talk to them and things like that. So that's a lot of fun. And it's just neat to, again, like, it kind of circles back to that representation discussion we were having earlier, where I think it's important for them to see, like, I have a strong athletic body. I was in competitive swimming for 15 years and all these things. Slowly approaching middle age is still pretty good. But, I think it's important that people see, Wonder Woman of all shapes, that they see Big Bardas of all shapes, all these things where it's not just, as much as I love, like, it'd be fantastic to be model-esque. That is not my stature. I'm much too tall and things for that. But I think it's important that they see a variety of body types and athletic and strong. And like I do a lot of weightlifting.
Hmm.
So, it's like I want to look like the strong Wonder Woman. I want to look like Big Barda. I want to look like I could, you know, lift. And I don't look like I could lift a car, but, I like that athletic look where it's more realistic and toned and muscled, so that like that can also be beautiful and feminine. So I like kind of like representing that.
And that's a great thing. And my one little story that I have is like my daughter's 10,
Mhm.
and she is a bigger 10, like in height and density, like, and she's not like a big girl, but she's got like thicker, like, I guess, thighs or legs or whatnot. And she saw this girl the other day who had like tiny like stick legs, and she asked my wife and I, she's like, how can I have my legs like that? And we're like, you can't. Like,
Mhm.
you've got to be proud of who you are and how like you're built and what you'll eventually like grow into. But like, it broke my heart at number one, but like, I'm glad that there is again representation of different characters out there now, of different sizes and shapes and color and like everything, because like it makes it easier to be like, this character, it looks more like you, and don't you like her? And kind of lead in that direction to kind of go from there, because it is something where I think in the 80s it was not helped very
No.
much.
Well, and then in the 90s, the whole comic, I mean, not just comics, everything. But like if you look at some of those 90s comics, it's insane.
Oh my
Uh
goodness, yes.
yeah, it's crazy. But and it I mean that just speaks to like your daughter's like very young and she's already has, been trained, despite your best efforts to have that social awareness that part of my value is how I look.
Hmm.
And it's something that is so inescapable. And it's something I'm kind of contemplating now as I'm sort of like approaching being a parent, in the sometime in the future. And it's like, how do you combat that? Because like, yes, having representation in media is so important, but you're also inundated constantly, between that great representation, those commercials about makeup and all these things. And it's all genders of children, but especially girls. It's so targeted. So yeah, it's one of those things I think as a society we've got to start recognizing and reflecting on. Um, yeah, and then as looking at motherhood, it's like one of these things where it's like, okay, how do I, when I get ready and do cosplay and I put all that makeup on and I do my hair and I put on these outfits, like how do I do that in a way that is empowering? Like it makes me feel very empowered. Like I love it. It's about the only time I put on full makeup anymore. But like, how do I do that in a way that is inspirational and empowering rather than, setting, just reinforcing impossible beauty standards?
Hmm.
So it's kind of a strange double-edged sword with the cosplay hobby, I think. So I don't know.
It's definitely something that I know that I have several friends that do cosplay and they have kids, and it's been interesting to watch how they have shifted, whether it's like the characters that they do, or they make it more like family cosplay and include them that way. But it doesn't, like, it seems like it's not. And of course, as a parent, like, but I don't cosplay. I like, man, I see how they've changed, like going from like maybe like some of the bigger costumes or the more involved costumes to more like casual or comfortable or something where it's like easier for them to be in it but not have to do like the whole like 2 or 3 hour process.
You're right. Yeah, because it is. It's a long process. So yeah, I already have it a bunch of stuff bookmarked for someday when I need it. I can be Cara Dune and Baby Yoda, so it'll be great.
Yes, yes.
Because I got the arms for that. I'm very excited about that.
You're into comics and movies.
Mhm.
You have a band. You cosplay,
I do.
and on top of that, as we have talked about your time management skills. You you are part of the Happy Jacks role playing game, which is you have said it's a podcast streaming network.
Yes. So I actually manage that. It's we play and we stream tabletop actual play games of all different types, and we also have a weekly advice show that we do, where people write in from all over the world, asking for advice about running and playing in tabletop RPGs. So tabletop RPGs include obviously what everybody knows is Dungeons and Dragons. Um, we do play Dungeons and Dragons sometimes, but for the most part, we play a lot of more off-brand games. So if you're interested in learning about that, then that's definitely for you. You can find that at happyjacks.org. And right now, we do anywhere between 3 and 4 actual plays a week where people sit down at a table for 3 to 4 hours and play a game, and we record it and stream it. And then every Friday we have about a 1 hour. We aim for 1 hour. Sometimes we're a little shy. Sometimes we're a little over. Advice show, and it started as a podcast. We actually started that 10 years ago. This last year was our 10-year anniversary.
Oh my goodness! Congratulations.
Yeah, we're old school podcasters. Then, like about 3 years ago, we started streaming as well, and people finally got to see our ugly mugs. But yeah, it's been crazy, and people do write in from all over the world. When we started podcasting was still really new. It had been around for a little while, but it wasn't what it is today at all.
Mhm.
And and there were very few tabletop RPG podcasts out there. Critical Role was not even a glint in Matt Mercer's eye at the time. Things like that. So, there was a handful of us. It was like this small little community that kind of banded together, and there's still a couple of us who are out there from the old days. It's kind of fun, but it's really neat. We get in emails from, let's see, we've gotten some recently from Sweden and Norway. We have a lot of kind of that area. We have a couple coming in from Australia, generally a couple times a month. We once went and sat down. We've gotten emails from every continent, which we're very proud of now. So, which includes Antarctica, and we made that listener submit photographic proof, and he did. So he's either like the best Photoshop person ever, or this. But he held like a little sign up, and there was like a penguin in the background. He couldn't tell us where he was. We assume he's at some sort of military base or something. I don't
Mhm.
know, doing crazy experiments on the ice. Who knows?
When I first started getting into listening to podcasts, and I'd asked friends like, like what tabletop podcast could I listen to? Happy Jacks was one of the ones that was recommended to me way, like, I'm saying I probably like 5 or 6 years ago.
Yeah.
I
And
mean,
just think we were 4 years old already then.
that is like podcasts don't seem to like last that long,
Right.
and especially for like a tabletop podcast to be going for that long, because you see tabletop podcasts come and go sometimes where it's like it just doesn't work.
Yeah. And it's interesting now because it's flipped, because it used to be all advice shows. And then actual plays where you actually listen or watch, if you're streaming, people play an actual game were very rare, and there was not a big market for them. But now it's flipped. And if you actually look at the tabletop RPG media that's out there, it's hugely into actual plays.
Hmm.
It started picking up a little bit before Critical Role really hit, really like debuted. But since then, like there's such this like explosion of all these actual plays. And there's very few just advice shows now. So it's kind of an interesting trade-off. It's really fascinating.
Now, how did you first get into tabletop gaming?
Well, I've done tabletop gaming since like junior high. I I shudder to think of like how those games back in the day were all like 12 and 13 trying to figure out the rules, and it was just a nightmare. And then I kind of like faded from doing that. I got really into online RPGs, like multiple, massive multi-online games. So I did Ultima Online back in the day, which is dating me. Then there's EverQuest, and then WoW came along eventually and just took everything over. So that was really what I did for a long time, and I actually did role play in those. I was the nerd who was like talking in Elvish.
Right.
Um, but that's not really a skill you can list on a resume. So at some point, I was working at the Red Fair with a bunch of my friends, and we all were gamers. So we'd all sit there. We were in bands, so we had different stage show times. So we'd all sit backstage between these shows, talking about D&D and all these tabletop games and World of Warcraft and these things. And finally, we have a recording studio because we're this group of bands that all record CDs. Stu Venable, who actually owns the Happy Jacks Network, he's kind of my partner with everything, was like, hey, why don't we do this thing called a podcast? I've been listening to a couple of them. We could sit in the recording booth and talk about this, just like we do. So we basically picked up and did what we did between shows and started doing it in a recording studio and recording what we were doing. And then eventually we started realizing people were actually listening, which was kind of a revelation because we kind of didn't think they would. And then we were like, hey, yeah, if you have questions, you can write in. And then that eventually developed us just sitting and shooting the shit about things, actually developed into, people writing in every week. And that is now kind of the meat of our show is like, we do 2 or 3 emails a week that we just kind of read through and then dissect and give advice. And yeah, and they keep sending emails. So we keep doing them.
That's always a good thing.
Yeah.
Now, you play multitudes of games. There's like so many, and we've had like a role playing renaissance of basically if you want a game about anything, you can find it. Like it is out there, or if it's not out there, it's going to be made at some point.
Right.
What are some of your favorites that you've been able to play that are not the norm of games that you would recommend and be like, you need to really try out this game?
Oh man. Okay. So there's a lot. It's really popular right now, but it did sort of start as an indie game. I do love Powered by the Apocalypse games.
Mm-hmm.
Specifically, one out there is what my favorite. It's called Demigods PBTA. You can find it at demigodspbta.com. And basically, you're playing young demigods, which great title, right? So it's like in the flavor of like Percy Jackson, or if you like American Gods or things like that. So it's like you're playing these. I mean, it's sort of like superheroes, but you are the children, and you get to pick what deity you're the child of. So it's just this amazing thing. I'm a huge history buff, so it's so cool being able to dive into the religions of the past and pull out like these cool Egyptian gods and Greek and all these different things, and then like play in a modern setting as the child of that deity.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just fantastic to play, and it's so well done and well designed. Another game I really love is a game called For the Queen.
Okay.
Which is not a tabletop RPG in a sense. It's actually a kind of a card game, a role-playing card game. And it's a fantastic game where you flip over cards and you collaboratively make a story together about the queen that everyone serves. And you can kind of, as you go, make up a story about maybe she's, it's different every time you play. So sometimes she's a good queen, sometimes she's a bad queen. I did a game one night at a con that was really late, and it ended up being like this cat that we all worshipped. So it's kind of crazy. It's a fantastic game as well. Gosh, what else? Masks is another Powered by the Apocalypse game I really love, and that one is like young superheroes. I'm GMing a campaign of that right now on Wednesday nights on Happy Jacks, and it's just so much fun. And it's like teenagers with superpowers, and there's drama between them, and I don't know, it's just fantastic. They're still learning how to use their powers. I'm also a big fan of the World of Darkness games. They're a little bit more well known. They're not as well known as D&D, but they're a lot of fun. And the Vampire 5th edition, even though it had a lot of controversy when it was initially released, is a really elegant take on that system. And they've done a really great job improving that system. And then there's some controversy with some of the content originally in it, and I think that the company did a really fantastic job of responding to that criticism and fixing their mistakes. So you can feel good about playing that now. So I could go on
I
forever, by the way. So
it is okay. Like that is one of the things that I love. Like I'm looking at my bookshelves now of like all my books from the 90s forward of what I've been able to keep and hang on to. And it's like, oh, I miss playing. I love playing. I wish I had more time to play. But yeah, it is definitely something, especially the Powered by the Apocalypse, because there's so many different settings and hacks to it and everything that, like, when I see it on Twitter, I'm like, man, that's just yet another one where people have taken the system and they just like made it to what they need it for.
yeah, absolutely. And I think that's the kind of the beauty of the system. There's a lot of people who don't like it because it's very free form. But with a great group, it can be fantastic. But it's such a versatile system, the mechanics of it, that it's very easy to skin with any kind of fandom or things like that. So a lot of people have done that. So it's really fun. There's so many things. There's a great Star Wars hack of it. There's so many things out there. There's one called Monster of the Week, which is kind of in the vein of Buffy the Vampire Slayer or like X-Files, where like there's just a monster in every episode. Urban Shadows is another PBTA hack that's monsters, but this time you are the actual monsters, and there's like a lot of politics involved in it. It's just like if you can think of it, it's been made into Powered by the Apocalypse.
Mhm.
So that's the kind of, I think the other appeal of it is like there's something for everyone. If you have a fandom, you can probably find a Powered by the Apocalypse game that like will fit it perfectly.
Absolutely. Well, one of the questions I've got, because you all have been doing this for so long, especially like 10 years as a podcast, how was it like not transitioning, because I don't want to say transitioning, but to exploring the realm of doing it on Twitch?
That was weird at first. A lot of us, like, again, like we started as Ren Fair performers, so I think we had a little bit of we kind of missed the initial like streaming Twitch beginning. We were a couple years late on that. But a lot of us were performers anyway, so we were used to kind of being on stage. Really, the technology was the biggest hurdle, trying to figure out, because we have our garage studio out there. How do we wire it in without the cameras being obnoxious and still make it look good? But we're on a budget. We're very careful. We don't do Twitch, and like there's a lot of RPG networks out there that are trying to make money.
Mhm.
We very specifically are trying to break even. So like we have a Patreon that pretty much it pays for our internet connection, which is very important. It pays for us to run the air conditioning in the summers, and then it pays for like when we need to replace a camera or a mic now and then. But we
Right.
don't want to deal with taxes.
Yeah.
We don't want to, like, there's a lot of groups out there that are having to meet quotas of how much they get donated, and how many subscribers they have every month so that they can pay their rent. We're lucky enough to have a garage studio on property that one of us owns, so we don't have to worry about that. So we just want to make sure it stays a fun hobby. We don't want to, like, we love having people involved in our games, but we don't want it to affect gameplay. And when you try really pushing the money-making aspect on Twitch, inevitably you have to have some disruption to how the game goes.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of like, at least at this current time, that's sort of like our choice that we've made about that. It probably keeps us in a little bit smaller like live viewer numbers than we would be generally, because there's not a ton of like interaction happening. Like we have people monitoring the chat room and talking with people, but there's not like you can buy dice and things like that, because we tried that for a while and it just wildly affected the actual mechanics and the math involved in the tabletop RPGs that we were playing, which is a huge component of it. So if you start influencing how the game mechanics work that much, are you even truly still playing that game? Kind of became our, I don't know, Schrodinger's RPG question. So yeah, I don't know. So that's what we're doing. So there's like 30 people who all are playing, who all kind of rotate through playing different games and showing up on the advice show and things like that. And I run the schedule for that because I love spreadsheets. But yeah, I don't know. It's just lots of fun, and it kind of has. Well, we try and look professional and things. It has the feel of like friends playing at a table more than, I mean, we have incredibly talented performers, but you don't get the feeling when you watch us that we're performing, because we're not like cast in it. Like if we didn't have cameras and if we didn't have a podcast, we'd still be meeting up and playing.
Right.
We probably wouldn't be as good about starting on time, but so that's like really our goals. We want it to feel really authentic and like friends playing at a table, because that's really what we are, and that's kind of what is kind of the different appeal to our show than like a lot of other things on Twitch. And it's kind of hard to hold on to that, but we're trying really hard to do that.
And that's something I hope you do hold on to that, because I think it is something that would set your channel apart from the other ones that I tend to see. And it's like, okay, like I hate to say it, but like sometimes it all blurs together on especially like when I see it on Twitter, like the advertisements for the shows. I'm like, yeah. It's all blending together at some
so much. Yeah. And there's just so much now. Which is great. Like as a tabletop enthusiast, I love that the hobby is becoming so much more mainstream. I wish D&D wasn't such a big piece of the pie, but I have faith that will hopefully slowly change over time. But yeah, on the other hand, when you're trying to get people to see your thing, it's also kind of annoying.
For those who have listened to this episode, Kimi, what are some of the best places that people can find you, whether it's internet sites or Twitters, Instagrams, whatever you want to promote out there?
All right. Well, you can find me at Golden Lasso Girl on all the normal social media stuff. You can find me there's happyjacks.org, and that's the Happy Jacks network that I run. And you can find the Happy Jacks socials and Twitch and YouTube and our podcast and everything through that. And I also write games. You can find the games that I write at goldenlassogames.com. You may still be noticing the Wonder Woman theme, so it's a thing. And then I do have a blog, but I haven't really touched it in a while. So those are the best places to find me so far.
Awesome. So I'll have all those links on the show notes and on the website and Facebook page. And Kimi, thank you so much for taking the time out of your schedule.
Thank you for listening to Tales from the Fandom. Subscribe to us on iTunes or your podcast app of choice. Follow us on Facebook at www.facebook.com/talesfromthefandom to see photos, links, leave feedback, and check out upcoming guests. If you'd like to be a guest, email David at talesfromthefandom@gmail.com.